found the rabbi and the pastor. I'm the pastor. My name is Kent Philpott.
And I'm the rabbi, Rabbi Tzvi Bar David.
All right, Tzvi. It's been a few months since we haven't been able to get together for our programming for some time.
It's that pesky power outage.
We had power outages.
And then I was out of town.
You were gone.
Yeah.
But we got a topic that may be 2 programs long.
Could be.
Persecution.
Right, persecution.
Persecution.
You know, what is it? And the second, and really the question that really animates me, I have some passion about it, is what is it that we can do about it? Not just what the roots are, but what can we do about it?
So I think sitting in the other room, we decided we could try to make 2 programs out of this.
Right.
We're going to talk about what it is and then maybe how it is that we can come to terms with persecution and how we can work to minimize it, if not eliminate it. But how would you describe the word persecution? What does that mean to you?
You know, I've been thinking a lot about it since you sent me your thoughts in email less than a week ago, and I'm beginning to think that the reason that persecution and oppression of one group upon another, whether it be for religious grounds or ethnic grounds or whatever the grounds are, you're wearing the wrong color hat, that the basis of persecution lies in the very same ability of human beings to form into groups for purposes of work or ethnic groups or tribes, which makes getting rid of persecution extraordinarily difficult, because at the same time you would be getting rid of the benefits of human beings able to coalesce, to coagulate as it were, into groups that do beneficial things.
So the persecution is the crowds, like Douglas Murray writes about in the book The Madness of Crowds, and they can be anything. They can be around almost anything, not just religion, but a lot of times we assume that persecution has to do with religion, and there's been plenty of that, and we'll talk about that. But it can be political. It's tribal.
It could be sports. I mean, in modern times, one of the biggest problems in Europe are riots at these huge soccer games, soccer stadiums across Europe.
Manchester U.
People get killed, trampled on. Arsenal. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was in the 70s. I was at a soccer match in London. Yeah. And it was Arsenal against some other team. Yeah. And I was in the end zone, and the end zone is not where you want to be, because that's where the rowdies are, and it was dangerous. It was dangerous.
I believe you.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So we have persecution. Christians have been persecuted.
Yes.
Christians have persecuted Jews.
Yes.
You know what I like to say when we talk about Christians, doesn't necessarily mean they're Christian.
You know, you're letting yourself off the hook.
Okay, I know, Tzvi. I don't want to be identified with the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, where the church snuffed out ruthlessly any deviation. I told you the story in 1555 that John Philpott, a direct ancestor, was burned at the stake, and it was either the Roman Catholic Church or the Church of England. I don't remember in 1555. But it's in the history books.
Wow.
And he was a Puritan. He had a theology very similar to my own. If I had lived in that day, I would have been burnt at the stake, if I'm going to let people know about it.
If you'd been public about it,
yeah. So there's been a lot of religious persecution. It goes on big time. We were talking about Myanmar.
Right. What used to be called Burma, right?
It used to be called Burma. We have a religious group, Buddhists, who persecute the Muslims.
Called Rohingya.
Yeah.
I would never.
And in China, it happens. The Chinese government also persecutes those Muslims.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
the Uyghurs.
Huh?
The people who live in western Xinjiang, the westernmost province of China, which abuts what used to be called Soviet Central Asia.
Right.
Right. They put them in concentration camps. They
Oh,
put
sure.
The ethnic Muslims in concentration
Yeah.
camps.
So you have religious persecution. I'm just reading about in the newspaper the Japanese internment in World War II.
Here
Here.
throughout the western United States, if not the whole country. Yes.
Yeah. So we have that sort of thing. The same thing happened at the end of during World War I. The ethnic German people from Germany had come to America. They were persecuted.
Mm-hmm.
So Americans are capable of it.
Mm-hmm.
Religious groups are capable of it,
Mm-hmm.
and there has been plenty of it. As you mentioned, in the first few centuries of Christianity, up until Constantine time,
Roughly 300, 312.
Yeah, 312,
Of the Common Era.
and where Constantine, the head of the Roman Empire, embraced Christianity, made it the national religion.
Well, I'm not sure about the exact dates, the sequence of events. It was a very slow process, but what's amazing about Christianity in the Roman Empire, it went from being regarded as an act of treason against the Roman state, against the Roman Empire, as atheism. They regarded it as atheism, to being tolerated with the Edicts of Toleration early in the 300s, to not long after that, I don't know how many years, becoming the state religion of the Roman Empire.
Sure. One of the persecutions, I don't know if it was Diocletian, Decius, or who it was, but the Romans would bring around a statue of one of the Roman gods, and they would make all the Christians come out and give a sacrifice. And if you didn't, you would be executed.
Right.
And it was the Lapsarians, and they would say, what are we going to do with these people who sacrificed to the Roman gods and denied Jesus? And I like to say, well, I would have done the same if I had a family. I'm going to
Save your life.
I'm going to save their life and my life, because it's just an act. It's not a commitment. It's not a heart-brain thing, But the Christians went through that, and we know that the medieval church, the Roman church at that time, ruthlessly persecuted Jewish people.
Jews and Cathars, Albigensians, Huguenots, that was in the late Middle Ages or early Renaissance.
Waldensians, another
yeah,
group. They're
right.
very similar to Baptists, by the way.
Right. Apropos of the Lapsarians, there's at least one, if not many, Jewish parallels. The history of Muslim-Jewish relationships, and for that matter, Muslim-Christian relationships, has been kind of an up and down affair, depending on which ruler or which imam had the ear of the ruler. So there were rulers that were generally pretty tolerant of Jews and Christians, the Golden Age in Spain, but then there was one particular king of Yemen who was extremely intolerant, and I don't know that there were any Christians in Yemen at the time. This was roughly 1150, 1170 of the Common Era in Yemen, and he was a Muslim ruler, and he compelled on pain of death all the Jews, and there were many, many thousands of Jews or more in Yemen, to convert to Islam. Some years later he died. The Jews sent a letter to one of the leading Jewish scholars of the time, Rabbi Moses Maimonides, who was living in a very tolerant,
Famous name, Moses Maimonides.
very tolerant kingdom, Muslim kingdom, as centered in Cairo in Egypt. And they said, can we come back to being Jews, or are we lost forever? And he said, no, you're not, because, and it was should we have martyred ourselves, taken death, rather than allowed ourselves to be converted to Islam to live? And he said, no, the Torah says, v'chai bahem v'lo tamut. The Torah is to be lived by, not to be died by. There's only three things for which the Torah, actually Rabbinic Judaism, said better you should die a martyr than commit the following 3 crimes, and the 3 crimes are incest, killing someone else because someone is pointing a gun at your head and saying, I'll kill you if you don't kill them. You say, Joey, just kill me. I'm not going to kill Sammy. And the third one is idolatry. And Rambam made a very important ruling in Jewish law in the, let's call it the 12th century, in which he said, Islam is a different religion from Judaism, but it is monotheistic. So we disagree with the whole business with the Prophet Muhammad. That's not Judaism, but there's no God but God. That's not a problem.
Right.
And so you can come back. So very much like the Lapsarian story that
Sure.
you just told.
And we've mentioned this already, Svi, I know, but the idea that most people will get when you mention persecution, I think of religious, but it can be any identity, any political or social identity.
Mm-hmm.
We think about, of course, the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And that was a political thing in my mind, that Hitler was able to galvanize and excite a whole generation of German people to demonize this group of people and go after them in such a brutal and cultic way. The cults. We were also mentioning that one of the most persecuted groups in more modern times have been the Christians in China.
Mm-hmm.
The Christians in China, and still today, yet, despite that persecution, there are more Chinese Christians in China than in any country of the world, well over 100 million,
Wow.
and growing.
Mm.
And it's the underground church, it's the house church, not the official Chinese Christian church.
Very much like the early church in the Roman Empire.
Exactly right.
Meeting in caves and grottos, homes, quietly.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, very persecuted.
Yeah.
And there's one, to further the religious thing, I have to say this, and to people who are Lutherans, I'm sorry, but the Baptists were radically persecuted by Martin Luther's alliance with Frederick, the German.
Barbarossa?
Not
Barbarossa.
No, but I don't know if it was Frederick the Great, but
I don't think it was.
they sent their armies, Luther sent armies to the Baptists and slaughtered them. I've read the history, the story, and it is horrific. And Martin Luther's one of my heroes. I love Martin Luther, Lutheran people, Lutheran Church is wonderful. I think it's possible to take almost any entity, whether it is social, religious, racial, ethnic, and you turn the table and you can infuse into that group a cultic mentality where you demonize anybody who disagrees and you demean them, and then of course it's okay to kill them.
You know, what makes the process exponentially more horrendous is when this tendency of human beings to demonize each other for religion, for politics, because you're wearing the wrong color hat, whatever, you belong to the wrong sports team, when that gets coupled with state power, then it's really horrendous. I mean, you pointed out an example I wasn't even aware of, that because of Luther's relationship with a temporal power, namely
German princes.
German princes, was able to rally, to get armies from these kings and dukes and barons and whoever, and literally go to war against people of a different religion. The holiday, the Jewish holiday that refers to that sort of thing, is Hanukkah. The Hanukkah story, the backstory of Hanukkah, is really interesting because it points to the reason why states like the Chinese government, like the Chinese Communist government, do these sorts of things. There were times when the successor kingdoms to Alexander the Great, the Hellenistic kingdoms, were tolerant of Jews and others, and there were times when they were not. And
Until the time of Antiochus Epiphanes the Fourth.
Right, when Antiochus decided that the way to unify the kingdom politically was to have one king or emperor, him, one language, Greek, and one religion, the Greek religion with Zeus and Hera and so on and so forth.
The whole pantheon.
And anybody who was doing anything else had to convert to, to.
And he did it all over the world,
throughout his empire.
Throughout the empire.
Throughout his particular successor state to the Alexandrian Empire. And, there were Jews who, kissed the statue of Antiochus and ate the pork, which we're not supposed to do at all. And neither, actually, because the one is idolatry and the other is a violation of the most fundamental violation of the kosher laws. And we fought back.
And what happened was Antiochus, he went in 167 BCE, and he sacrificed a pig on the altar
of the temple.
At the temple.
He desecrated the temple.
And then he destroyed the city.
Right.
And then the Maccabean revolt.
Right.
And 164,
right.
The temple
BCE.
was rededicated, the Feast of Lights.
Right.
Hanukkah.
December. Rededication.
December, we're coming up to Hanukkah. One of the dates that people estimate that the temple was dedicated on was December 25.
It could very well be, but you have to understand.
Which doesn't authenticate Christmas.
No. Here's the problem. I don't want to get too lost in this because we don't have a lot of time. But the problem is that the Roman and later on the Christian calendar, the Gregorian calendar, is pretty much a purely solar calendar, whereas the Jewish calendar lunar. Is this weird solar-lunar mix, and that in order to make sure that farmers can plant in the right solar season, we actually have to add a leap month every 3 or 4 years, a whole month, because we get out of kilter, right? But what it means is that you can't trust dates to be synchronized.
You're right. You're right. I shouldn't have. If I think of it, I'll delete that part.
No, leave it in.
Leave it in. Okay. But yeah, so you had this, and so with Antiochus, it was on political,
right,
social reasons. It's not just religious.
No. It had everything to do about the unity of the empire. I mean, the Chinese communists are no different in their persecution of religion, because they regard religion as a storehouse of social contiguity, and the only social cohesion that they want in the country is that which is blessed, shall I say, by the Chinese Communist Party and nothing else.
Sure.
And it was the same with Antiochus. It was the same with the Soviet Communist Party and the Soviet Union, right? It had to do with the fear that rebellion could come from any group that had any social cohesion that wasn't permitted and supervised by the ruling authorities, namely the party.
Now, one thing that the Baptists like myself and Jewish people like yourselves,
right,
we have in common was the early days in the founding of America,
right,
where the Jews nor the Baptists had any political strength. They didn't have
rights, hardly any rights.
They didn't have any strength at all. They didn't
right,
have strength of numbers. They didn't have a charter. They ended up going to Rhode Island.
Right.
First Jewish synagogue in America was Providence, Rhode Island.
I've been there.
And it was the Jews and the Baptists who struggled hardest for freedom of religion in America, have it written into the Constitution. So today, as I observe things, and I've just had to go through miserable hours editing my new book that has a lot to do with issues of bigotry, hate speech, and so on, the various epithets that we demonize people with who disagree with us. And there's certain terms that are used for it, but I don't know of a day that I've experienced in my life, at least that I wasn't aware of, but I am now, of the division we have in America. And it's not just, there's some religious, of course, there's going to be some political, but there's social, but there's the sexual, the sexual stuff. My book is primarily about that area, called The Third Sex ? And I deal with transgender issues. And you want to talk about warfare, is when you jump into the transgender issues, and it almost gave me headaches this last couple of weeks. And everybody, I'm right, you're wrong. You know, you say the least little word, you may say the wrong word, and you're going to get blasted. And my point, Svi, is that we become very divided, very much put into camps that I'm right and you're wrong. I have the right view, you have the wrong view. I have the right view to say what I want. I have the right, I can say what but you need to be squashed because you're a bigot. You're this or that or the other. And it flies, all the phobes. We've got so many phobes, P-H-O-B-E-S. We got phobes. So I think this is a very apropos topic that we have, Svi, today in our world. Of course, the next program we're going to talk about how we deal with that. How can we counter and start to deal and heal these issues of persecution? Because it's just not one religion against another. It's I like to refer to the cultic mentality. The cultic mentality, and it's very easy to get to the point where you're convinced me and my group are right, and you don't have the right to say otherwise, and we don't want we'll demonize your statements. But anyway, that's what I see, and I'm really kind of glad to be dealing with this idea of persecution.
Yeah, what came up in our earlier conversation before we started filming was I realized, and I expressed to you the fact that, you know, it'd be so easy for me as a Jew to get into pity party, to use a 12-step metaphor, and said, oh, oy vey, everybody, you know, beats up on the Jews. 6 million of my brothers and sisters, Ashkenazi Jews, like myself, you know, died in the Holocaust. Horrendous. Be easy enough, and legitimately so to stay right there. But that's not but one has to go on and live. And so the question that I have, and it's more poignant and relevant today than ever before, is how do we create, not just in this country, but worldwide, a culture of acceptance of difference? I can disagree with you, but I'm not out to kill you. I'm not out to take away from you your right to have your opinion,
right,
and to express it. And how do we create that? And I've been really giving that a lot of thought for a lot of years. But I'll reserve my
for the next program.
My solutions for the next program.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, Svi. Well, the reality is that I am capable of persecuting other people. It is not unusual that it would be so. We were going to be talking about the scripture, you know, the Hebrew Bible and the Greek Bible. And I think we find a little bit of an answer to that in the Hebrew Bible alone, where you find that Satan is a murderer. Cain slays Abel. And we find in our opening scripture, we find the warfare, tribal, religious in nature, having to do with territory.
I want to recover, to me, I want to recover the positive benefits of tribality. Tribal, in modern American parlance, has taken a very negative valence. I find it among assimilated Jews. It's like, I don't want to know from Israel. I don't want to know from a lot of being Jewish. That's tribal. Tribal is bad. And suddenly tribal is this bucket of muck. And as I mentioned early on, my belief, and I suspect there might be some science to it, is that persecution and social cohesion come out of the same place in the human psyche. And you can't get rid of one without getting rid of the benefits of the other, namely social cohesion. So the vexing question is, how do we have appropriate social cohesion? For example, social cohesion as American citizens. How do we have appropriate social cohesion and at the same time have more than tolerance, respect, and openness to others? To me, that's the critical thing. And maybe the solution, I don't know, also comes from a wonderful phrase in the Bible. I'll say it in the Hebrew and translate it into the English. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, ve'ahavta le'achicha kamocha. And you shall love your neighbor, you shall love your brother and your sister like yourself. And I think in that phrase lies both the problem and possibly the solution.
And this is what we're going to be focusing on in the next program, pretty much. Yeah, I agree, Zvi, that the problem is a heart problem.
Yes.
It's a heart mind problem. Mm-hmm. But we have to admit that it's common to the human condition.
Yes.
You just can't look at a country or a religion or a stream of ideas and say and identify that's what it is. It emerges from someplace deep.
Very deep.
Someplace deep, and we'll talk about that. We can talk about the fall next time. But
Let's
Zvi, we got to do something else.
We do.
We're going to look up here. May the peace of God be with you.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above you.